Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Coding on Swiboe, the next generation text editor. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. I sure did. And of course, weekend always means a lot of stuff happens on Swiboe. So let's go through the things real quick. Um, let's start out with I think here I merged this branch. I figured out why our tests were flaky and fixed that. That was a really quick and easy fix. Went really quickly. Basically, what it came down to is that we had a race condition in our tests. We were using in our the plugin buffer test, so the tests that were actually checking that you could create and delete buffers and so on. They were using the same client for serving an RPC and calling that one RPC. And there was a race condition on shutting down which thread shut down first, and that actually made the test flaky. And the simple solution is to just serve the RPCs on a different client than the one that is actually calling it. And what else did we do? We updated cargo.log. There was actually something that was necessary yesterday, and the newest version of Rust Nightly broke again for Aster. Aster is a library that is used by Serde, which integrates really deeply into the compiler. And so whenever they change some internal compiler stuff, Aster breaks, and then they need to update it. And in our cargo log, we explicitly wanted to use the older version of Aster. So for newer nightlies, our code didn't compile. So we fixed that yesterday. And then on the weekend, I also looked into the change that I wanted to do, which is basically changing the client to not use Mayo, instead doing so basically what we had in the client before was one event loop thread, and this event loop thread had a thread pool of threads that would actually do the input output, so the writing and reading from sockets. So we had at least two threads always working on the client only for I/O, and I changed that to now only always bring up two threads, one that does reading and one that does writing, because the client always only has a connection to the server anyways, and there's not much use with having a thread pool, and the code is much simpler now. So if we look at how the implementation looks now for the client, basically all we do here is once we have a connection to a socket, we bring up the read thread, which is like that's all that is for the read thread. It just receives messages and then sends them on to the logic thread. And the same here, that's all there is to the writing thread. It just receives the messages that should be sent from a channel and then writes them out fully synchronously. And that's really nice. It's really simple to think about. And those threads are also easy to bring down, which is sometimes hard in multi-threaded programming, how to bring down all your threads. But you just close the socket and then all of those threads will terminate. Much simpler design. It's also a little more performant, easier to think about. Really nice change. But that is not yet merged. If somebody wants to take that code review, please feel free to do so. And one more thing, oh, actually two more things. We merged the RFC today. Where is it? Should be somewhere here. Well, I don't see it right now, but we merged the request for comments thread, so we now have a full description of our layered RPC system in the code base. I think probably needs another iteration to go over, because I'm not fully confident that we have covered all of our bases, all our possible use cases, but we'll see. Okay, and so we can get started now, I think. We were on this 01C library continued branch yesterday, and in chat 6065 just pointed out that our Travis build actually failed for this particular branch, and that is absolutely true. And the problem that we have here is that Mayo is actually changing, or just recently changed for a TCP connection, what the returned value are from the connect call, and This branch does not contain master. Master actually pins the version of Mayo to a particular revision. So we have a guarantee which version of Mayo we build against. This branch does not do that yet, so it actually tried to build with a newer version of Mayo than the one that I have on my system, and therefore it failed. And we will fix that today by starting out by merging master, and this pins the version of Mayo to a particular version, and then this error should be gone. Okay, since so much has happened on master, I actually want to start out by merging master, and then we go from there. Let's see. So this is our branch. We want to start out by merging master. Oh, actually, I should probably first make sure that master is actually fully up to date. That seems fine. So back to our branch and we merge master. And now we build again. And let's see where we're going. Actually, on Friday, we started out with testing, if I remember that correctly. We had a test.py, and we had a very weird looking test.python file. For example, we copied and pasted over a unit test, a minimal unit test file, and we didn't change all of the names as I see right now. We have here a test string method that is actually test Swiboe client low level. I think that's a good name. Okay, so this compiled. And I updated my version on my system to the latest nightly, and on the latest nightly, the result expect feature is actually stable, and the same goes for the C string memory features. So we can actually get rid of those. That's really nice. We use this one here, this one here. We don't need those anymore, and then we can build again. And then we have to see if the tests still pass. So we have to provide the library that we actually... Oh, no, that's not what I want. I want actually to run the tests. Yes, but that needs that you give it this... Oh, I forgot everything about what we did last week. I have to somehow pass it the library that it wants to use, right? So where's the other Python file? That is the other Python file. Oh, but there is a Swiboe. There must be some Swiboe.py. Yeah, there we go. And we actually need to provide this, right? We have to give a library that will be target debug lib Swiboe. And now if we run the test, now it should work. Oh yeah, there we go. Wonderful. Okay, so how to continue here? There are some things that I don't like. So first, we need to have a server running here, otherwise our tests will not pass, right? Because we bring up a Swiboe client and we connect to this particular socket. And to change that, actually the correct thing to do is to bring up a Swiboe server for each test, and each test runs on their own Swiboe server. And we already have something in Rust that does that. So if I look in tests, I think in test support there's this actually, right? We have this test harness class which does very little. It creates a new temp directory, and then it creates a file underscore socket in this temp directory, which is actually the one that the server listens on. So a Unix domain socket. And then it returns this class, which contains the server name, the socket name, the temp directory name, not the server name, but the server itself, the socket the server listens on, and the temp directory where the socket is situated in. And once this class is actually dropped, it deletes the directory and it shuts down the server. And that's the test harness that we are actually using in Rustland. And now we have two options. Either we make this somehow available to Python, either as a library or as a standalone binary that you can bring up and that will provide you with a temp directory to work in. Or we re-implement the same code in Python and that is of course not super nice, because that would mean that we need to re-implement the same code for each language that wants to test. I think the simplest solution is to make a standalone binary that will actually that we will call test server, for example. It brings up a server and writes out a JSON blob with all the configuration data of the server, and then a test can actually use that and bring the server down again. And we can probably implement this using this test harness here. But I believe that's a little bit of refactoring. So let's start there. Basically, we would like to have in source bin, we have already a server, and we write this one out to test server, right? So now we have a second binary that is called test server, and that looks exactly like the server binary so far. And I believe we will probably not need most of the command line options here, at least not at the very beginning. So what we would like here is that is a Swiboe standalone server for testing. And that removes this, that removes... or maybe we need one of those. Actually, let's keep one of those and we not call it listen, but we call it config file. I'm not sure. I'm actually thinking about basically what we would like to have is we bring up the server creates a temp directory and a server that listens to something, and this temp directory then must be made available to the calling function, like the calling, like whoever starts this particular server. And the easiest way to do that is to have a JSON file, but where do you write this JSON file? Is that actually a command line option, something like state file or something, or like maybe let's call it state file for now. State file, and that is then actually the file that we write the JSON configuration into. But that seems weird because then the calling code, so the Python code, already needs to create a temporary location, a temporary file where it is allowed to write into. Another alternative would be to make the first line that we output this file, right? So then we have to do I/O, which is also not super nice, but maybe that's still the best solution, I think. So then we don't take any command line arguments, and we actually would like to use something that is very similar to this here, but of course this is our testing code, and we now need it in production code, because though this is called test server, that is a standalone binary, so it is production. So we have to refactor this and actually make it available in the production code. So we move this actually away from test support. It's actually, yeah, so we move it away from test support into source, and we call it testing. Why not? Okay, and then here we can say, well, we use xmcreate Swiboe, and we use Swiboe testing test harness. Wonderful. And in Swiboe itself, we actually have to say that it's a public module testing. And nearly done, I think. Nearly done. Actually, now what we do here is we don't have nothing like this, but we actually have our mutable test harness, and that is a test harness new. And then we call test harness server wait for shutdown. And that's probably, I'm not quite sure if this is actually acceptable or not. Let's see. And here we would like to have something like a print line test harness socket name. So that's actually not quite it. Actually, we would like to have test harness temp directory, because that's all the information that we need right now, right? This should maybe instead print out JSON file name that contains more structured data. But for now, we only need the temp directory anyway, so we can just keep it like that. And if we now go back to Swiboe, here we should be able to run it like so, test server. And it is unhappy because the testing.rs is actually different, right? That is actually using, that should be looking like this, I think. And we need extern create temp dir. So slip.rs, we do that here. Extern create temp dir. And I think then we probably don't need it in the testing part anymore. Testing. We still, no, we don't use it anymore. So here we can remove it. And actually, of course, the tests have to change because we don't have this support thingy anymore. And yeah, getting closer. This print line must look like this. Still unhappy about stuff. No method wait for shutdown file found for. Yeah, that is true. Actually, we would like to have it like this, pretty sure. Because the server is a option. Interesting. It doesn't like the temp directory is a struct, so there must be something like this, hopefully. The trait format display is not implemented for standard path. As string lossy, maybe? Okay, so what can I do with a standard path? Standard path. I actually would like to print it out, and apparently that is not straightforward. ToString, that sounds great. If path is valid Unicode, that sounds like that's exactly what I want, right? I would like to say we take the path, we want it ToString, and then we unwrap that because we're confident that the temp directory always makes UTF-8 valid paths. Field server of struct Swiboe testing test harness is private, it says. And I think we can just change that. Yes. Either this or we implement for test harness a wait for shutdown. Maybe that's better. We can say something like pub fn wait for shutdown, and that takes a mutable self, and then call self server unwrap wait for shutdown. Like so. Then we have here also a wait for shutdown. Okay, so the server is running and it says this is our temp directory, and if we actually look at this temp directory, what do we see in there? We only see the socket file, but that is all that we actually expect to be there. And we could now change our test to run against this particular server, and that would work just fine. And the question is now, I control C out of that. Does that actually delete that server, that file? No, it does not. So that's really unfortunate. That's really unfortunate. So the question is how to actually shut down the server then properly so that it has a chance to clean up the directory. And I don't have a good answer for this right now. Basically, here we have to think about this only exits on Control C, but then has no chance to clean up. How to deal with that? Nevertheless, for now that is all that I wanted to have. So let's go back to our tests.py. And here we actually we probably want to have some argument passing that we can provide to this one. Yeah, I think so. Either arguments, or we make a second environment variable that defines where the test server is, which is maybe also acceptable. But then the test running becomes more and more complicated. Yeah, I'm not so sure about some of those stuff now. I'm not so sure about the Swiboe library. If we make that an environment variable, we cannot really pass it on the command line. But then it feels weird to make the test runner also an environment variable. I think we probably want to switch this one to be on the command line too. But then again, I'm undecided, really undecided. For now, let's hardcode the test server here. Of course, that is also not a good solution, but for now that works. Nocom should not be hard-coded. Okay. And now we would like something to have a function that starts the test server, and that needs something from the subprocess module. Import subprocess. Python subprocess. Yeah, we want a long-running process and we want to read at least one file from it. So we definitely want the popen constructor here. Um, so that should be very simple, right? It should be, is there nothing here that we can just copy and paste? No, unfortunately not. Okay. We want something like popen, and definitely our arguments, that is, I think it's a list, right? Yes, it is a list. So our arguments will definitely be the test server. And right now we don't have any arguments for the test server, so that should be it. And then we definitely would like to stream input and output. So we have the standard out pipe probably. So I think if we just say, well, standard out is a sub process pipe, and everything else is actually the defaults, I would say. Okay, and then we have send signal. We can use that to bring that terminal, to bring the server down again. And oh, we can also use kill for that. Really nice. So, well, actually, we probably don't need a separate server for that. We just say, well, this is in the setup function. And in the setup function, we say self server process is this one. And then self test tier is self server process read line. Is it read line or is it, who knows, right? Nobody knows. And we want to strip that. And now let's echo this. And then on tear down, we actually bring down the server process again. We say self server process kill. And now let's see what happens. We just need to run the test. Actually, we can bring this one down. Oh no, we cannot yet. Typos. Right, this goes away. Beautiful. We have a wonderful crash. Whoa, whoa, whoa. popen object has no attribute read line. I think that's correct because that should be standard in, and then here read line, maybe. Apparently not. None type has no. What? Why none type? Oh, should be standard out. And still not happy. You know what? Let's remove all the tests that are more complicated and only keep the very simple one. And it's still not happy though. It says failed printing to standard out. File object has new attribute read line. So it should be read line like so then, right? Oh, and there we go. So now we bring up the server and then we shut it down again and we have the correct test directory. And now we can say, well, we are not only interested in the test directory, but also in the socket name. And we know this is just the test directory. And we append underscore socket. And that's actually already iffy because this should just be in the JSON file, right? We should not construct that because if we ever change the name of the socket, then this test will break, or all of our tests will break, and that's something that we really don't want. Okay, now that we have that though, we can just say, well, here we connect to the socket name, And yes, that should be it. Great. So we can kill this server now and run here, and it will still work. So we're getting there, slowly getting there. All those temp sockets we replace through self socket name. And here too. And here. And that should be it. And it still works. Of course, now the tests are slower, right? Because we have to bring up a separate binary for each test. So that is, of course, slower. But it works. And we're independent of running some external binary. The tests are independent. They could even run in parallel without disturbing each other. That's all in all, it's a much better solution. I wonder if it's actually faster if we use a release build of the server. I doubt that it makes much of a difference because mostly it is about I/O. But let's just test that and see what happens. So here we are not using debug, we use release. And for the C client too, cargo build release. Of course, we renamed this file earlier, right? That was called test support, and now we moved that into the main crate and called it testing. So we actually have to fix our tests because the tests have been using this left and right. So I'm pretty confident that we actually broke our main crate for now. So once we're done with this small little test, we will fix these tests, and that will be it for today. Come on. Yeah, done. Okay. So running the tests, we're not taking the debug version, but we take the release version, and oh yeah, it's much faster actually. It's nearly as fast as it used to be. Interesting. I didn't thought it made such a difference. Okay, what is Git saying? So we definitely added one new file that we need to add. This is this one. And all of the rest is fine. But now we have to actually run the tests and make sure that still everything passes. But I already know that the benchmark cannot pass anymore. And here too. So tests plugin buffer is complaining that support is no longer existing, and that's true. It is actually called Swiboe testing now. And the same for plugin for core, tests core. Here also support test harness is now called Swiboe testing test harness. And that should be it for the tests, but we have the same problem also in our benchmarks. Here it's even uglier. That's actually nice that I can get rid of that. Right, we did a trick here because we had this the support module, and we also wanted to use it in the benchmarks. And since there's no way of actually reusing something that you wrote for tests in the benchmarks, we recompiled it here in as a separate module and just told the compiler that this is at a non-standard location. But that's a little ugly, and I'm really glad that we can get rid of that. So here we use Swiboe testing test harness. And I think that will now go through. Let's leave it running, but I'll end the stream now. I'll stick around as usual for another 2 or 3 minutes. And if there are any questions, please post them in the stream. Oh, and if somebody wants to do this code review, the client without Mayo, I would be more than happy if somebody looks over that. That would be really, really nice. Okay, our testing actually did not run through because failed to select the version for net2. And where in the GUI? I think we can just do an update cargo here, and then it should work, hopefully. Cargo test. Yo, seems like it's working. Great. Okay, so I'll push that, and I'll post the SHA of what we did today as usual in the stream. I'll stick around in the stream chat for a while longer, so if you have any more questions, just find me there. Thanks for watching, and I talk to you people tomorrow. Bye!